Requesting connection. Established. Encrypted. We're live. The show you've been asking for. Advice, technology, and community. Linux first, all others second. This is Ask Noah.
Live from Altispeed Technologies, the Ask Noah show starts right now. This is the show where we came to do all the things on Linux they said couldn't be done and take your questions on how to do the same. The phone lines are open this hour. To be a part of the program, it is a free call, 1-855-450-NOAH. That's 855-450-6624, or send an email to live@asknoahshow.com. My name is Noah Chalaya. I am your host. Delighted to be here with you as another episode of the Ask Noah show kicks off this hour. Joining me, my co-host, Mr. Steve Evans. Welcome in, sir.
Good evening, Noah. How's it going tonight?
I'm doing great. So we are off to do a Steve Wi-Fi home troubleshooting extravaganza.
Yeah, you might say that. My trouble continues with Wi-Fi, and I don't know. I guess the quick summary here is I've got 4 access points and only 70 clients. I know people are rolling their eyes saying only, but when you've got 4 access points spread around, 70 is not that much, and yet we still have intermittent drop-offs from random things on the network, and it's starting to get very maddening.
Well, never fear. I is on the way there. Yeah, I'll tell you what, working with you is going to be significantly better, my guess is, than the 13 or 14-year-old kid that I get a call from hotels that says, I'm trying to game on my Xbox and my latency isn't what it is on your hotel Wi-Fi that was designed to... And I'm like, come on, kid, really? 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 This is my life? And then going through and actually trying to, put on the customer service thing and then go fix the problem. It's like, I'm digging. Before I ever started that problem, I knew I probably wasn't going to arrive at a satisfactory answer for anyone involved. But then you got to kind of jump through the hoops. At least I'll be working with another technical person who it could, A, rely on the information that I'm being given, but then B, who knows? I might even have a little bit of help.
Well, I hope so. I mean, I wouldn't count on me for a ton of help, but I can answer some questions.
Oh, let's do that. That sounds like a great idea. First email comes in from Joey. Joey writes in and says, hey guys, regarding last week's discussion on guacamole, assuming that your place of work has a static IP address, what is your opinion of restricting remote access to guacamole to said IP address? Wouldn't this at least restrict the access to hosts in the building as opposed to the entire world? Unrelated, the Linux Challenge Coin segment was awesome. Where can we find Steve's presentation? So I'll break that up into 3 different questions. Let's work our way backwards. Steve, where can they find your presentation?
Which presentation are we talking about now?
I have absolutely no earthly idea, but it's in the question, so I'm reading it to you.
That's a good question. So if it's something that I've presented at a conference, such as Self will often put them online, although the last time I was there was problems between the audio and the visual, even though they posted it. So I got a bunch of comments like, where's the audio to this video? So I don't know. We'll hope that the IT provider has it together this year.
Yeah, it's not. No comment. Well, let's just say there's a time and place for automation. It is great. Sometimes it has limitations, and then I think maybe it's okay to massage a little bit sometimes and not have everything locked right to the automation. But so if it's something that Steve said, you can potentially find it on YouTube. If you can clarify your question, Steve, you oftentimes will actually keep your own copy of a lot of the work that you do to make it shareable from your own perspective. So if it's something that you've given a presentation on, you might have a copy of it too if he's a little more specific of what he's looking for.
Yeah, oftentimes I have recorded myself either at the event or before the event, because one of the things that I do when I practice is actually record myself giving it kind of like a trial run. So maybe no audience, but at least it's something.
100%. Yeah, as it turns out, when I'm listening to something back, I could care less if there was somebody else there at the time or not. Okay, what do you think? Restricting access to hosts building as opposed to the entire world. Let's start here. As a general security operation, if I told you, hey, Steve, I've got this potentially insecure thing, but it's okay because I'm going to restrict it to only respond to my IP address. I have a static IP address. Nobody else can take that static IP address and use it. So it would have to come from my computer, from my trusted network. I'm okay with that. I don't see any threat vectors inside of my network. What would you tell somebody as a consultant? Would you say that's a good security practice?
I mean, it's better than nothing. I think it's equivalent to locking your door when you've got a big, window right beside the door. It's going to keep the it's going to keep the average person out who's just going to walk up and try the front door, and if it's locked, they go on their way. If it's someone that's going to try and get in because they're specifically trying to get in your house, they're going to pick up the rock and throw it through the glass and get in that way. So if you've gotten, you can spoof IP addresses, you can spoof MAC addresses, you can do all that sort of stuff. And so for the average end user at home, that's going to cover a lot of your use cases, because likely if someone's trying to target you anyways, you probably are in a world of trouble to begin with. So good luck defending against any of the motivated individuals out there.
I mean, so like I can set my IP address to whatever I choose, but in order to get the networks to route it, I mean, it would require some level of access, right? Because you're going to have, so like, let's say you're going to spoof the IP address of the practice in question, or my business, right? You'd have to at least get onto the ISP's network to be even able to carry or pass that traffic. Otherwise, the other network that you're on, or ISP that you're on, has no idea what to do with that traffic, because as far as it's concerned, that IP address exists over here.
It depends, right? You can poison the routing table and stuff like that. There's all kinds of stuff that, like I said, for the average end user, it's fine. But I want to be clear that we're segregating here. I would not recommend that as a sole line of defense, or even as a primary line of defense for a business. If you are actually worried about being targeted and someone is motivated, that is not a sufficient defense.
Well, and let's be clear. My guess is the vast majority of people that listen to the show do so because they're a little extra. They tighten the tinfoil hat a little much, Steve. It's what they do. It's what we appreciate. So, okay. If not restricting IP access, is it at least, even if it isn't maybe the only line of defense, would you say it checks the box of, well, I'm not the lowest hanging fruit for all of the fools that are hanging around in China and Russia, and I'm not picking on any specific countries, but the places where you get a lot of these malicious attacks that are coming from, let's just say you ban, huge geographical swaths and say, I'm only going to limit it to, this. Does it at least, move my fruit higher on the tree?
Oh, of course it does. Like I said, it will block anybody who's trying to come in through the front door, right? So most people are going to look at that and say, it's not worth my time because I've been, geo-locked or whatever. It really takes an individual who's motivated and thinks there's some value there. So you're going to block the script kiddies for sure, right? Because they're just running a script and they're just looking to cast the widest net. So it will definitely shield you from a large, let's call it splash pattern.
I shouldn't share this because it's not really relevant to the email or really anything to the show, but it came to me in a moment, Steve, so now I'm going to spit it out. I, in college, figured out that the way into any apartment building ever, a surefire way to get you into any secured apartment building ever. Do you know what it is?
Pretend like you're the guy that's doing the maintenance?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, you can pull that. If you just walk up, though, and just push all the buttons in they got little door ringers. You push them all. 100% of the time, Steve, 100% of the time, in my experience, of course, 100% of the time, at least one person is like, yeah, I don't care who it is, and hits the button to buzz the door open. You get 95, hello, somebody, but like one guy or gal is just like, let him in, and hits the button, lets you in. Works 100% of the time. I don't know why I thought of that. I thought of it, thought to share it. Okay, Tuvit asks in the chat room, I'm trying to watch video streams from my Axis camera. It's an M1034W in VLC, but I keep getting unable to open stream in VLC. I've tried every variation of RTSP and then camera IP, Access Media, AMP, both with and without the port number, username, and password. Nothing worked. While VLC is unable to view the stream, Home Assistant is able to get the stream from the camera. It's a bit delayed. Any ideas what else I can try? So, Steve, have you pulled an Access camera feed, or have you pulled, you've got reeling cameras too. Have you done either of those in VLC, and what's that process been like for you?
I've hooked them directly into Home Assistant just as the central place for everything. So I can't say that I've specifically gone and pulled them into VLC consistently, right? I've grabbed the RTSP feed at one point just to be like, oh, look, I did it. And then completely just went along and did nothing else with that. So
joining us in the Mumble Room, it is 2-Bit. Welcome in, sir.
Evening.
So this has been kind of a problem trying to get your Axis camera to play in VLC. Can I just ask, what's the interest? It's working inside of Home Assistant. Is the goal for VLC just kind of more of a geek, hey, I want to know why this doesn't work or how to get this to work? Or is there a practical thing you want to do with VLC that you can't do in Home Assistant?
Now, a couple things really. One would be in VLC, it'd be a larger view, whereas in Home Assistant, it's kind of a small screen there. And the other thing is kind of just compare the delay between VLC and Home Assistant, because Home Assistant, it takes a little bit to get going, and it isn't long before you start seeing that buffering wheel.
There is a site called iSpyConnect.com, and basically what they'll do is they'll generate the viewing URL for any particular make and model camera. So I just threw the M1034W into it, and what it spit out to me is RTSP://admin:/admin, so username : password, and then at the IP address / and here's I think the part that maybe you're missing, onvif-media. Does that one ring a bell, or did you try that? I'm going to post it here in the thing for you as well, so you can take a look at that and see if that hits your buttons. But if you haven't tried that, I'd give the Axis-media, ONVIF-media a shot. And I'll put both the RTSP link that I'm suggesting, as well as the link to iSpy Connect in the show notes. And you can get those at podcast.asknoahshow.com.
Okay, I'll give it a try.
All right. Hey, I appreciate you writing it. 855-450-NOAH. It's 855-450-6624. The email live@asknoahshow.com.
From the Linux Newswire newsroom, this is the Week in Review with JT.
For the week of May 26, 2024, here's the Linux and open source news. Linus Torvalds has announced the first 6.10 release candidate. RISC-V now supports Rust in the Linux kernel, and 6.10 is also disabling NFS v2 client support by default. Alpine Linux 3.20 has been released with initial support for 64-bit RISC-V and KDE Plasma 6. And Handbrake 1.8 is out. In hardware news, Linux vendor Tuxedo Computers has unveiled the 6th generation of their Tuxedo Stellaris Slim 15 Linux-powered laptop. Powered by either an Intel Core i9 or Ryzen 7 processor, the Tuxedo Stellaris Slim 15 Gen 6 laptop also features NVIDIA GeForce 4060 or 4070 graphics cards, and up to 64 gigabytes of RAM for the Intel spec, or 96 gigabytes of RAM for the AMD spec, up to 8 terabytes of SSDs, and a maximum battery capacity of 99 watt-hours. In open source AI news, IBM has released 2 new 34 billion parameter code models. It has also launched an initiative called InstructLab, which aims to accelerate the contributions of open source community to generative AI development. And lastly, AMD to acquire Nod.ai to boost its open source AI software capabilities.
Steve, I have been a huge fan of Markdown ever since somebody showed me what Markdown was. Now, it was interesting. When I was talking to my wife, she was telling me about her efforts to preserve documents. And when she was a kid, she figured out that if she saved everything as .rtf, it would open on virtually every computer. You didn't have to have a special word processor in order to be able to open that file. So she thought that was a really good archival format. And indeed, it served her well, because in 2024, she could double click on the RTF, it opens up with LibreOffice, and boom, Bob's your uncle, her documents are still there. So it's good. But I think one of the things that people miss is, if you've ever opened up like a .docx file, it uses like an XML markup language, and it looks like gobbledygook if you open it up inside of a plain text editor. Whereas if you open something like Markdown up, it largely looks like a file. Do you have any experience, or have you had any luck with, as I'll call it, normies using Markdown?
I suppose the answer is yes, but they don't know that they're using Markdown. Usually it's when you give them a WYSIWYG.
Okay, so they're clicking on things and choosing bold, and then it's formatting it and it looks bold, but behind the scenes it's just adding double asterisks around the word.
Correct.
Okay, so kind of like almost like in a Wiki.js style.
Yep.
So I have had some success with that. The thing where I've kind of struggled a bit is when I'm trying to get people onboarded into Markdown. So I'm trying to get somebody to understand it or learn it or whatever, and they they kind of get, I don't know, overwhelmed, I guess. And so one of the tools that I've been looking to for a long time is a program called Obsidian. Obsidian allows you to take notes in Markdown. The thing that I like about it is it live renders it. So as you're typing things, and like you said, Steve, you click on you want bullets, you click on the 3 little bullets, and it gives you little bullets and you type. Then if you choose to, when you go to highlight all the text, it will copy it as Markdown, and so you can see what it's doing. But when you're pushing the buttons, it's doing it for you. And as soon as you click out of a field, it renders it for you. And so you can see what the final product is going to look like. Obsidian's great, but it's closed source. Well, KDE has a new Markdown editor out. It's called MarkNote, and it lets you choose to create rich text notes easily and organize them into notebooks. So the way that it does notebooks is really kind of fascinating. It has kind of a Microsoft OneNote feel to it, but underneath the hood, what it's doing, when you create a quote-unquote notebook, it's just creating a folder. And when you're creating notes, it's really just creating .markdown files, which, if you open them up, look just fine in a plain text editor. And so if the software were to catastrophically fail, you're left with a folder full of all of your notes organized into subfolders and then plain text files. Oh no, sorry for the convenience, to quote Mitch Hedberg. So I think it's a really cool approach to taking notes, and I think it's really neat that KDE is starting to prioritize Markdown in a way of, hey, we want to include this editor in with KDE apps. The other thing, as I went to KDE or apps.kde.org, Steve, did you know that you can install KDE apps on Windows? I didn't know that either. I will tell you, I have not gone looking for KDE apps on Windows, so that was a bit new to me, but it has been an effective technique for me to be able to go to people that are on Windows or Mac OS and say, hey, why don't you use this Office suite? Why don't you use this video editor? Why don't you use this image editing program? And it gets them comfortable enough with the tool set. Then when they make the switch over to Linux, doesn't seem like that big of a stretch. So MarkNote, I like because, again, as you're typing, you have the ability to you highlight something and you click on the little bold icon and it makes it bold. Or you click on something and give it the little italics and it makes it italics. Now, behind the scenes, it's doing all of that in Markdown. It just, from the user's perspective, they don't know. Now, here's the things I don't like about it. So one thing is that it's very early on in its development. There's not a lot of features here to include like a native dark mode. It will respect your system's theming. So if you have the rest of KDE installed and you choose dark mode, it's going to follow that theming, but there's not an individual theme control, which is fine. I can overlook some of that stuff, but then it gets into, there's no way to like export. No, well, there actually, I said that and then I right-clicked on it and it turns out there is a way to export. So there is, and to include PDF, which is becoming a sacred feature. There are so many places that rely on plugins to do that, that it's actually really cool that you can output to a PDF. But you have the ability to output to HTML, to PDF, to ODT, which I thought was particularly interesting. But the other thing I didn't like about it is that it doesn't allow you to, so far as I can find, the ability to edit just in Markdown. It looks like it must be in what I would call WYSIWYG mode, or where you're in plain text mode, which is fine. Again, for people that have never used it before, I think this is going to be I'm absolutely going to use this tool as an introduction to Markdown. Where I think it has some shortcomings is if I'm typing Markdown, and don't get me wrong, you can type, double star and then a word and then double star, but it doesn't turn it bold. And if you're used to Markdown and you're used to just banging it out, I want to be able to just type Markdown. And, so anyway, I think it's got some room to grow, but I like the fact that they're including it as part of the KDE app set. Chaos 2405 debuts with full Qt6 integration, Plasma 6.6.5, KDE Gear 2405, and the removal of X11 dependencies. So, Steve, have you heard and or played with, I'm going to call it Chaos?
It was on the list of things that I have downloaded and thrown in a VM, but that is to the extent of where I went with it.
So as an Arch user, you're going to like this. It's not Arch per se, but they pick and choose from a bunch of what they like best from distribution. So they take a little bit from Fedora, they take a little bit from Arch. The thing that appeals to me right off the bat is It is Arch insofar as it's using Pacman to install the packages, but they hold it back just a little bit, so it's not getting the absolute bleeding edge that the Arch distributions are getting. It's a little bit held back and primarily designed over the ability to experience KDE. And so kind of like KDE Neon, except not based on a particular version of Ubuntu. It's a rolling distro. So you install once and you're just good to go. But if you want to play with KDE, I would tell you Chaos is the way to go. So Chaos 24.05 has been released. And one of their interesting choices was to give support to Bcachefs. And this is a relatively new copy on write file system for Linux. As of October of last year, it's been merged into the Linux kernel 6.7. Which was released, I believe, this year in 2024. Now, here's what kind of stands out to me off the page and jumps top of mind for me, Steve. If I'm a person and I'm looking for things like the ability for snapshotting of my file system, and I want to do that natively on Linux, right now my choices are, so far as I understand them, I can use Btrfs, I can use ZFS if I'm willing to use Ubuntu, install a package on RHEL, or compile DKMS with RHEL, or I can use Bcachefs, which is now native as part of the Linux kernel.
I really like the inclusion of advanced file systems. I think that's an interesting way to get your hands onto something without having to tinker around with Kmod or similar type facilities that you might have to use. So, for example, in ZFS, you can use Kmod. There's also DKMS, and there is now an option for OpenZFS where it's tied to the ABI version, so it moves in lockstep with the kernel. So that means that a specific kernel version needs to be installed, but if you have that, then you don't have to use DKMS, and that is how I've installed it. But I like to see other options to remove barriers to trying file systems.
Say that again, because I might have just learned something. So I was familiar with Kmod. I'm familiar with DKMS. You're telling me there's a third way to install ZFS, and if I understood you correctly, it's tracking the kernel version as it changes?
Yeah, I'm just pulling this up right off of their documentation, but basically there's DKMS and then there's ABI tracking, and so the ABI tracking ties it to a specific kernel. So they will release, this is particularly useful for RHEL-based distributions, because then you don't have to go through the ZFS, and it's really easy to hop from specific kernel to specific kernel. And so basically you install, it's right on the OpenZFS page under RHEL-based wikis, but you essentially install based on the ABI that is delivered by specific kernels.
Wow. Okay. I learned something new today. That's pretty cool. And you're using that on RHEL or some RHEL derivative?
Yes, on RHEL.
Huh. Interesting. And you run into any problems, or is it working really well?
Nope. Honestly, it has removed the friction like Ubuntu did when it came built in. Like, after installed it, I never think about it because it blocks the kernel versions that it doesn't like. Like, it's one of those things that once you've installed it, at least in my systems, the way it seems to work is once you've installed it, it doesn't allow you to upgrade the kernel to a version that doesn't have, because it uses it as a dependency. So you get, DNF will be like, hey, you're trying to update a package that has a dependency on this other thing, and you can't upgrade them together. Like, you can't bring them out of sync unless you specifically go and say, update the kernel, and then you'll get the message that says, hey, if you update the kernel is a dependency on this KABI ZFS module, and it will break.
Do you mind if I ask
me?
I do. Do you mind if I ask what is powering this, or what you're using this box for?
I use ZFS for everything, honestly. So in this case, I use it because I really like the compression features in ZFS. And so if there's anything that's going to be storing a lot of data, I will put ZFS on the file system. So in this case, I have a file system that serves both iSCSI and NFS into a bunch of Red Hat products that I use in my lab. So I've got, 6 or 7 terabytes of E drives. A lot when stacking VMs on it. Not a lot. So I use ZFS to compress the VM images to give myself more space.
If you were to do your home server, your main file server over again, would you do Ubuntu as a base, or would you go Red Hat?
Because of the ABI, I probably would do Red Hat now. Not that I have anything against Ubuntu. I've been running it for ages, but I really like the whole I don't have to touch this thing. Now I know that Ubuntu has that option for their advanced customers and stuff like that, but I don't have to touch the RHEL box. It just needs to sit there and do its thing. And it doesn't, you can set RHEL to just give you security updates like you can with Ubuntu. It's just, I have really, really been impressed with RHEL 9. I really like it a lot, to the point where I started replacing Ubuntu boxes with it. And that's not because I work there, but I had Ubuntu as the base for most of my things in my home lab, and then ran RHEL in VMs. But I haven't seen a compelling use case anymore between there's been a lot of work in RHEL to make sure that the NVIDIA drivers work, and the push for AI means that there's a bunch of integrations that were not there but required newer software. And since there's that focus, the newer software has been coming into RHEL 9 specifically. Mm-hmm. And so I just haven't had, Ubuntu had the edge in terms of, I guess, home user software and stuff, availability and stuff like that, but I haven't really noticed that deficit anymore.
That's fascinating. I'm closely following this entire process, in part because I've got some decisions to make, and to a degree, it's all what you're comfortable with, right? But when I've had professional training in one particular product, and you know it like the back of your hand, and it feels like, as you would say, old hat, I don't have to think. It just becomes muscle memory and instinctive. There's a certain comfort level that goes with that, and my holdout has been my file system of choice isn't there. And I guess to bring this whole thing full circle, as you look at the efforts that are being made in every distro, they're all moving towards trying to have as painless as you can implementation of these file systems. It seems to me that if you have the ability to include it in the kernel, or it comes included in the kernel, that's a big deal. And so Bcachefs seems like it has kind of a head start because it requires really no tinkering. You just have to be able to click it. And the other thing that I like about Bcachefs over Btrfs, for example, the designer's philosophy with Bcachefs is they're intending it to be as simple and basic as possible. They effectively want a slightly more advanced version of X4 or XFS. That appeals to me.
Yeah, I think it's really neat, and I'm watching with great interest. Although, you know me, I'm a slow adopter for core technologies like this. I'll go play with things, but when we're talking about rolling things out, especially file system, took me a little while to get on the ZFS train, and it'll take me a little while to get on the Bcachefs train.
I don't blame you at all. In fact, the thing that has kept me on ZFS is largely the ability to send snapshots from one ZFS dataset to another. It's just faster than rsync, like considerably. Ubuntu 2004. So this is interesting. Canonical signed an agreement to optimize for a single board computing known as the Milk 5 Mars, RISC-V. So dubbed the world's smallest credit card size high performance RISC-V SBC, the Milk 5 Mars board is powered by the Star 5 JH7110 processor with an integrated 3D GPU. It's ideal for hardware platform for RISC-V developers and enthusiasts. The Milk 5 Mars supports plug-and-play eMMC modules up to 8 gigabytes of DDR4 LPD DDR4 RAM and an M.2 EKey slot for Wi-Fi Bluetooth modules and an HDMI port supplementing a 4K resolution, 4-channel MIPI and 2-channel MIPI CSI 40-pin GPIO, RJ45 Ethernet, and supporting power over Ethernet, 3 USB 3.0 ports and 1 USB 2.0 port. Steve, if you would have told me 5 years ago that I'd be able to buy a RISC-V single board computing for $60, I would have told you you're nuts.
It's definitely come a long way. I'm not sure that it's there for end users yet, but it's definitely worth watching for sure.
I'll tell you one thing that was really interesting to me at scale, not this past year, but the year before, is walking past booths. And I walked past a PowerPC booth and I walked past a RISC-V booth. And one of the interesting things is I walked over to kind of poke the bear a little bit and see, what's in this? Well, how does it work? That kind of thing. And what I learned was that they had working demos of Linux. And I asked them, how much work was it to port this software over? And the answer was not a ton of work. And then they went into all of the reasons as to why a lot of the software was fairly easy to get running on RISC-V. And I thought, man, that really shows you the forward-thinking technology of Linux. Because it's so modular, they go and build this part over here, and all of a sudden this stuff over there just works because it has the ability to hook into this stuff over here. It's a really incredible breakneck speed. Once it goes open source, it almost kind of takes on a life of its own. Then it's kind of difficult to put the genie back in the box. So I'm excited to see $60 SPCs for RISC-V. I hope this gives a new opportunity for competing architectures. Now you got ARM, now you got Intel, now you got PowerPC, now you got RISC-V. It's no longer just one architecture. I think that's good for everyone. The newest research reveals that Linux vulnerability exploitation has doubled. Kaspersky indicates that an alarming rise in cyber attacks using exploits against Linux systems. Data from Kaspersky's security network indicate that nearly 130% spike in attacks targeting Linux users over the same time frame last year compared with this quarter's time frame. Furthermore, 65% of the CVEs were registered over 4 years, which indicates an increasing trend in Linux vulnerability. So, Steve, let me ask you something. Is this a run for the hills, duck and cover, the world is on fire, or is it kind of like the insurance commercials where they're like 95% of customers switched by saving to insurance company XYZ? Well, of course they did, Steve. Nobody went and got a quote from the second insurance company, and then it was 10% more, and they're like, oh, I'll switch anyway, right? Of course they saved, or they wouldn't have switched to you. Come on. So it's like presenting two sides of a triangle. I would argue that, sure, vulnerabilities are probably increasing, or there's more boxes being exploited on the internet, in part because there's more Linux boxes on the internet. And oh, by the way, like 95% plus of server infrastructure is running on Linux.
I think that's definitely a big part of it. I think another part of it that we fail to consider is as everything is going digital, so is crime-related things, right? And so when you're moving the financial target from one area to another, you're going to see a massive uptick in that. Not to mention, I wonder how much of this is impacted by the fact that, for 3 years, people basically didn't leave their houses.
Yeah.
Really?
Well, sure. And so you have all the opportunity to put all these things onto the internet and see how they work, and then you forget about them. And then a few years later, CVEs come out, and I don't update that thing. I just put it up on the internet because I was playing with it, Steve. I was bored at home during COVID.
Yep, exactly. You've got all kinds of reasons why this could be. I'd be interested to see doubled since when.
Yeah, I think they said in the last year time frame. So they're looking over the last year and saying, there's more players on the playing field.
Yep, I think that's part of it.
I'm not terribly worried about it. I would say if you stay up to date, your best, nothing is going to be foolproof. There's no such thing as no security vulnerability. But I would submit to you that if you keep your box up to date, your best opportunity to stay safe and secure is to use a highly vetted open source operating system and keep that up to date. Use the latest. Matthew Jones, he is the chief architect for Ansible Automation, and Kaete Piccirilli, she is the director of product marketing for Red Hat Ansible. Both welcome into the Ask Noah show.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for making the time. So give me a brief introduction. If somebody isn't familiar with Ansible Automation, how would you describe it in a 30-second elevator pitch? Katie, I guess we'll start with you.
Oh, great question. So, Ansible gives you the opportunity to automate anything in your enterprise IT estate. So thinking about networks, operating systems, storage data, anything that you need to be able to automate your enterprise IT, Ansible can help you do it.
So, Matthew, one of the things that I think comes up a lot is people will ask, so what are the requirements to run Ansible? Do I have to have an agent? Do I have to have a particular software stack? Is there a particular version of this, that, or the other that has to run? What are the requirements for Ansible to be able to control a device?
Very little requirements. So it doesn't require an agent. We classically call ourselves agentless. It does require that you be able to connect to it, right? So obviously you need to be able to connect to the thing that you're going to automate against. But nowadays the Linux operating systems that people use for servers and clients, they contain the necessary Python version that you need to run. We've really set it up such that operating modern Linux and server distros is you have everything you need to connect.
Talk to me a little bit about Ansible Galaxy. What is it and how can it be leveraged to make Ansible roles shareable and discoverable?
Yeah, that is a great question. So Ansible Galaxy is a place where whenever you build content, and this is the beauty about community, you can actually share that. And that content can be picked up by others and looked at, and a great place to start. That's one thing I love about Ansible Galaxy. It gives you the place to start when maybe you're not sure where to go.
Matthew, can you talk a little bit about Ansible Lightspeed? This is something that was it announced last year, I think, and came out and obviously is combining AI with Ansible. How does that work?
That's a good question. It's what Lightspeed does is it brings the capabilities of AI language models to the Ansible developer experience. And you see this, I think, with Copilot from GitHub. Certainly there are other systems where there are developer-aided tools for producing code and software. Ansible Lightspeed is a really unique experience in that we've trained it specifically with Ansible content. You mentioned Galaxy, for example. Galaxy is a source of the data that we have trained Ansible content on. Lightspeed is a very specific model for authoring and building Ansible content. But we've gone a little further than that in that we also include with it transformation systems that make sure that the Ansible that comes out of this recommendation engine follows best practices, is secure, doesn't include weird secrets and things that we wouldn't suggest, and we're constantly updating the rules and logic that would transform that data so that it's always producing, we hope, always producing good Ansible code that's usable out of the box.
Would you say that Ansible Lightspeed is a good way to get like a starting rough draft and then you finish it off? Or is it designed to be feature complete that, hey, I tell it I want this task or I want this thing to happen and boom, the roles are spit out, the playbook is ready to go and I run it?
It's a good starting point. We don't ever want you to put all of your trust in just one thing, though. But what it does is it gives you that really fast starting point so that this playbook can get me close to achieving exactly what I want. Look, the idea is that you're a subject matter expert in the thing that you're trying to automate. We want to lower the bar for how you express the automation that you want. But really, Ansible Lightspeed is more than just that language model. It's a set of tools around the language model that help take you even further. So inline documentation and linting and testing, these are all included along with that tool set so that it's not just the text falling out of the language model, it's the full suite of tools to help you write that automation.
I'm an organization and maybe I run a bunch of air gap systems, so they're not connected to the internet and I don't want them to be connected to the internet. Can I leverage AI Lightspeed or can I run it locally on my own hardware or does it have to be connected to the internet? And is it provided as more or less as a service rather than a product?
So today, you do have to connect to the Watson X Code Assistant language model, which is currently a SaaS offering, but in a very short period of time, you'll be able to have it hosted on premise.
Really? Now, will the models that are driving that, will those be open sourced?
They are part of the 20B that we talked about today or this week at Red Hat Summit.
Are there any plans for Red Hat to open source some of the training that's used to build those models?
So the exact training that we use to build the models is a lot of the proprietary capabilities of what Watson X does to train the model. Okay. However, we've trained the model using community data and data that's available. If you've listened to us, it's really important that we're good stewards of the community and the people who've helped make Ansible and Ansible content really great. What we've done is we've produced a set of documentation and how-tos on how to train a model yourself using whatever model that you would want, using a data set that you have access to, that you can then also plug into the Lightspeed developer tools. So obviously that puts a little bit more work on you, but it gives a lot of control for the individual contributor, that single user who's just trying to get their home lab or their small organization footprint up and running. That's something that's available to you.
What actions are being taken to prevent or account for LLM hallucinations?
So we've worked really closely with the IBM Watson research and development teams and software engineering teams who build these products. What we've done is it even goes beyond hallucination to preventing hate speech and other odd things that you can find coming out of models. We're really, really focused on Ansible content, meaning as opposed to some really general purpose system that just jams tokens together, we've looked at the structure of Ansible documents such that we can break down what the AI recommends into this section of the recommendation is the module. This is the spinning up EC2 instances or managing your Firewall D service from the parameters that could come out of that. It's very limited to those settings and capabilities in words. So hallucination is not something that we've had a lot of problems with because we're specific on understanding what the tokens it's recommending is, limited to the scope of the capabilities that Ansible has.
I've seen some examples of Lightspeed writing code. Would it be possible to give Lightspeed just like a playbook and have it go through and write the documentation for an existing playbook?
Yeah, we actually showed that at the keynote this morning.
Okay.
Craig demonstrated producing a playbook in one pane and having it describe the tasks that it took, even down to line by line. Here's what this meant. Here's what impact it has on you. This also works against playbooks that maybe you didn't author. Like, take this, examine it, tell me what it does.
Yeah. You referenced keeping secrets from being, from Lightspeed, from inadvertently disclosing those secrets. How do you do that? Or what is the methodology that's used to prevent secrets from accidentally being leaked?
So Ansible itself identifies fields on modules and properties that may contain sensitive or secret data. So think about an SSH key module that is responsible for generating a key for use to connecting to a system. When we produce the documentation on the fields, we identify a field as containing a secret that we would expect a user to provide in this field or through an environment that needs to be hidden and protected. And so we don't spit it out as output. All of the modules and plugins and capabilities that Ansible and Red Hat produce, we're very conscious of what those fields are. The community has adapted to that practice also over the 10 years that we've been producing content for this, such that we know what those are. And because we understand the structure of an Ansible document, we know that even if the language model were to have spit out a value for this field, the transformation system that sits in front of the language model X's it out and doesn't return it as part of the automation.
Help me understand best practice. If I have a playbook, would the best practice, if it's secret at all, would the best practice not be to put it into an Ansible vault?
Yes, obviously we want those secrets to come from a secrets management system or some other way of protecting it that it's not encoded. Just like you don't add passwords to text files or you don't send them in the clear text over email. However, we also are really cognizant of not limiting what people do or how people do it, right? Some people will fully encrypt playbooks before they're executed just because of that. And maybe that's the whole secret that you put in. So while it's certainly possible to include it in the playbook, we do strongly recommend as part of our best practices, reference a secrets management system. If you look at the Ansible automation platform or management system in front of it, we give you a full interface both to secrets management that Ansible automation platform itself manages or other systems like CyberArk, HashiVault, Azure Key Vault, those sorts of things.
Did I hear you say you can encrypt the entire playbook?
Yeah, you certainly could. And we see people take really crazy precautions on guarding the automation, right? In some cases, the contents of a playbook represent a trade secret or you could leak details on infrastructure, topology, architectural decisions. Certainly I've heard of people encrypting those and then decrypting them at runtime.
Wow. Is that a process that can be automated, or that by nature of it being encrypted has to be manually done? done.
Yeah, it kind of has to be manually done, right? Like it's a supervisory system, but this is content that you could also put into a secrets management platform. People go to really great lengths to protect that kind of information. We can meet you in the middle on those points too, in that Ansible Automation Platform supports content signing and verification, meaning at publish time, you hash it, you sign it with a particular key, and the Ansible Automation Platform will verify that as part of its runtime process. So we take those sort of like credentialed access and runtime management and supply chain really serious as part of that process.
That's awesome to hear. Talk to me a little bit about education. So for, I think, the past few years now, the RHCSA has been largely based off of Ansible. And so the idea, I had an instructor tell me once, know how to do all of those things by hand. Never do it that way because it's highly inefficient. Do it through automation. Is there a time where you see Lightspeed being part of the RHCSA, RHCE, but a part of the education process to teach people how to leverage that, as part of their IT careers?
I hadn't thought about it, but I'm sure that it's possible, right? As a part of the things that we've been thinking about with Lightspeed is your learners, right? And so how do you not only make your SMEs more effective, more efficient, get started faster, but how can you bring that closer to people who aren't a part of the, Ansible world right now? Certainly.
One of the things I'm hearing in the security circles, and even from a lot of industry, is they're looking for proactive responses, right? I'm familiar with Red Hat Insights, and obviously Ansible has the ability to reach out and touch a bunch of things and fix any things. Any plans or thoughts on coupling those two so that you could take the information gained from Insights and go implement action through Ansible?
So you can do that with EDA. So event-driven Ansible today can take any sort of event source that occurs, whether it's in Insights or Dynatrace or other scenarios, and you can actually build rule books that will tell you, you can put in what you want to do based on if it's happened 50 times and you've had to fix it 50 times, and it builds a decision engine, and then you can say, this is what has happened, the event source has bringing you this, and Ansible can go ahead and remediate that action and go back and even tell your ServiceNow instance, right, that things are good to go.
Wow. Can you talk about some of the other advancements since last year's announcement of Lightspeed? What's been new with Ansible over the last year?
Well, maybe Matt can talk about policy as code that we talked about today on the main stage.
Okay.
Yeah. Lightspeed is one of those things that we see permeating a lot of aspects of Ansible automation. And we showed that off with both EDA and policy as code. We see Lightspeed being a part of the event transformation and listening process. We also see it being a part of the observability process and policies, right? Authoring policies, validating policies, and verifying policies. But what we talked about this morning was trust but verify, having those humans in the mix. And policy as code is one of those systems that we can layer over the Ansible automation platform and apply the rules of the road for an organization for individuals to stay on, sort of the straight and narrow for how an organization is expected to write automation and manage their systems.
Ansible Galaxy, as we kind of discussed earlier, makes Ansible shareable and discoverable, or at least the roles shareable and discoverable, but it also creates a single point that everything must go through. And I actually experienced this firsthand. They had the migration from, I'm probably going to get the exact terminology wrong, but they moved from one version of Ansible Galaxy to the next. And as part of that, there was some account kerfluffle, we'll call it. And that took us offline for a little bit. Are there any larger plans to leverage the same concepts of Ansible Galaxy, but make it a little less it would be more decentralized?
You can certainly share roles and collections and playbooks through normal source control distribution patterns. Within Red Hat, we have Galaxy as the community source for shareable content. We also have Automation Hub, which is where we as Red Hat and Ansible publish our content that we've written and certified and support, and our partners come into that ecosystem also.
Okay.
And we expect that there are a lot of different ways that people could share content. Galaxy is just one way, but source control systems and other publishing platforms to highlight those details, we expect that to happen there also.
One of the things that I have heard from critics of Ansible is that under large loads, it can be time-consuming or it can be process-intensive. Are there any efforts to make Ansible any more efficient, or is it kind of as good as it gets, so to speak?
We're always working on the performance of Ansible, memory efficiency and CPU efficiency. I think what we've seen is that a lot of a lot of the optimization of automation comes from changing the mindset of how you run automation. Do you really need to touch a server every single day? Yeah. Can you combine Ansible with tools that perform other actions like observability and indexing for CMDBs and systems like that? And so a lot of what we do is both optimization of the code, because we do this all the time, right? Ansible has improved in memory efficiency and CPU efficiency every year since we first created the project. But we also want to teach people how to build automation the right way and how to optimize for those tasks. And within Red Hat, we have communities of practice, reference architectures and systems, and training classes and labs to help people adapt their mindset to this sort of new world of automation that we're in.
Very cool. What is coming down the road for Ansible? What can we kind of look forward to, or what should we be keeping our eyes out for coming up next?
So policies code that we talked about today, that's a big development and strategically important point for us over the next year. So keep your eye on that, expanding Lightspeed into other areas of the platform. And we're also growing and adjusting our internal architectures for the system to make sure that we can build new features like EDA, like policy as code, doing things like expanding the other capabilities of the system, from inventory management to credential management. There are more places we can go with these systems, add more value to automators, to companies, better integrate with the systems that they have. So we're going to do that through that sort of holistic approach while still delivering value through things like EDA and policy as code.
Matthew Jones, he is the chief architect for Ansible Automation, and Kaete Piccirilli, she's the director of product marketing for Red Hat Ansible. Thank you both so much for your time. We'll get you back on the program soon.
Awesome. Thanks for having us.
Before we wrap up, a couple of things. Steve, you and I are amping up, so we're going to do a little Wi-Fi troubleshooting, and then you and I are going to be headed to Southeast Linux Fest. Both of us, I think, are speaking this year. It's going to be a good time.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing everybody in person again, especially you and producer JT. I barely ever get to see him unless it's in a conference somewhere, so I'm hoping that he'll be around this year.
He will definitely be around, as will I, as will you, as will a couple of friends of the show. I think Kristen DeLuca and Brandon are going to make it there. I think Patrick from New Springs Church is going to be there, so it should be a good time. Excited to see everyone. The meetup is Friday at 6 p.m. You can find details at podcast.asknoahshow.com. Steve and I will be live, I imagine, Saturday afternoon. We'll have details for you to follow. If you want to catch the show notes, they're at podcast.asknoahshow.com. There you'll find not only articles and references we use to make this program, but you'll find the entire back catalog. You can keep up to the latest by following the show at Ask Noah Show. I'm at Colonel Linux. He's at Linux Ovens. We're back next Tuesday, 6 p.m. Central. AskNoahShow.com.